absolutes.
For hundreds of years, adventurers have been searching for the real Mount Sinai, the holy mountain where Moses led his followers at the time of the Exodus after escaping from slavery in Egypt. It was on Mount Sinai that, according to the Bible, Moses received the Ten Commandments from God.
What if the place where Moses received the Ten Commandments has been hidden in plain sight for thousands of years? The traditional location of Moses Mountain has long been debated, but cutting-edge drone technology is now revealing hidden formations and patterns that could change everything we thought we knew. Follow along as we explore what the drone discovered and what it could mean for history. The mystery that puzzled scholars for centuries. For thousands of years, people have wondered about the exact location of Mount Sinai. This mountain holds incredible importance in religious history. According to biblical accounts, this is where God spoke directly to Moses and gave him the Ten Commandments. This is the place where heaven and earth supposedly met in one of the most dramatic encounters in human history. But here's the fascinating part. Nobody can agree on where this mountain actually is. There are dozens of different proposed locations. Some scholars point to one mountain, while others insist it must be somewhere completely different. The debate has gone on for centuries, with each generation of researchers bringing new ideas and new evidence to the table. The traditional site that most tourists visit today is at St. Catherine's Monastery in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. This location was chosen way back in the 4th century by Queen Helena, the mother of Emperor Constantine. She commissioned the construction of Christian monuments at various biblical sites. But here's the problem. Many scholars now question whether she actually got the location right. What makes this mystery even more intriguing is that modern technology is finally giving us tools to investigate these ancient sites in ways that were impossible before. Drones, equipped with advanced cameras, can now fly over restricted areas and capture detailed images. Ground-penetrating radar can see beneath the surface without disturbing the soil. These technologies are opening new doors in biblical archaeology and giving researchers fresh perspectives on age-old questions. How radar technology sees through Earth. Before we dive into the discoveries, let's understand the incredible technology making these findings possible. Ground-penetrating radar sounds like something from a science fiction movie, but it's a real tool that archaeologists and geologists use every day. The technology works by sending electromagnetic waves into the ground and measuring what bounces back. Think of it like using a flashlight in a dark room. When you shine the light, it bounces off objects and comes back to your eyes. Radar works the same way, except it uses radio waves instead of visible light. These waves can penetrate soil, rock, and sand to reveal what's hidden underneath. When the waves hit something different from the surrounding material, like a buried structure or a change in rock type, part of the signal reflects back to the surface. Ground-penetrating radar operates in the frequency range between 10 MHz to 3 GHz. Different frequencies can penetrate to different depths. Lower frequencies go deeper but provide less detail, while higher frequencies give sharper images, but don't penetrate as far. In rocky desert environments like where Mount Sinai candidates are located, radar can penetrate quite deep, sometimes revealing features dozens of feet below the surface. Modern drone technology has revolutionized how researchers use this equipment. Instead of having to drag heavy radar equipment across rugged terrain on foot, researchers can now mount lightweight radar systems on drones. These aerial surveys can cover large areas quickly and safely. They can reach dangerous or restricted locations that would be impossible for humans to access. The combination of drones and radar technology has become a game-changer in archaeological research. Let's talk about the location that most people assume is Mount Sinai. St. Catherine's Monastery sits at the base of a mountain called Jabal Musa in the southern Sinai Peninsula. This monastery is one of the oldest Christian monasteries in the world, built between 548 and 565 AD. It's a beautiful and sacred place that attracts thousands of pilgrims every year. The tradition identifying this location as Mount Sinai goes back to early Christian times. Some evidence suggests that even before Christian monks arrived, the site had special significance to local communities. Archaeological discoveries show that Nabatean people were making pilgrimages to this area in the 2nd and 3rd centuries BCE. The monastery was later built at what believers thought was the location of the burning bush. However, many modern scholars have raised serious questions about this identification. One major issue is the lack of archaeological evidence from the right time period. If millions of Israelites camped at the base of this mountain for nearly a year, as the biblical account describes, we would expect to find some traces of their presence. But despite extensive searches, archaeologists have found very little evidence of large-scale human activity at Jabal Musa during the Late Bronze Age, which is when most scholars date the Exodus. Another problem is geographical. The Bible provides several clues about Mount Sinai's location, and some of these clues don't match well with the traditional Sinai Peninsula location. For instance, the Bible mentions that the mountain was in or near the land of Midian. According to most ancient sources and historical geography, Midian was located in northwest Arabia, not in the Sinai Peninsula. This geographical mismatch has led many researchers to look elsewhere. The Arabian alternative emerges. This brings us to a mountain that's been creating waves in the archaeological community. Jabal al-Lawz, which means Almond Mountain, is located in northwest Saudi Arabia. This remote peak rises to 2,580 meters above sea level, making it the tallest mountain in northern Arabia. For many years, this mountain was off-limits to researchers because of Saudi Arabia's strict border controls and the sensitivity of the region. The story of how Western researchers became interested in this site is quite dramatic. In the 1980s, an explorer named Ron Wyatt first proposed that this could be the biblical Mount Sinai. Later, other adventurers and researchers, including Bob Cornuke and Larry Williams, actually sneaked into Saudi Arabia illegally to investigate the mountain. They documented various features that they believed matched biblical descriptions. What caught their attention? Several things stand out about Jabal al-Lawz. The summit of one peak in this mountain range, called Jabal Makla, appears blackened. When you break open these dark rocks, the inside is light-colored granite. This reminded some researchers of the biblical description in Exodus 19:18, which says, "Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke because the Lord had descended on it in fire." At the base of the mountain, researchers have documented various archaeological features. There's a large plain that could potentially accommodate a massive encampment. There are ancient stone structures that some interpret as altars. There are rock carvings and inscriptions using ancient scripts. These findings have convinced some scholars that Jabal al-Lawz deserves serious consideration as a Mount Sinai candidate. Let's look at what historical sources tell us about Mount Sinai's location. This is where things get really interesting, because different ancient writers seem to point in different directions. Understanding these ancient testimonies is crucial for evaluating the competing theories. The Apostle Paul wrote in Galatians 4:25 that Mount Sinai is in Arabia. In Paul's time, during the 1st century CE, the Roman administrative region called Arabia Petraea actually included parts of both the modern Sinai Peninsula and northwest Saudi Arabia. So Paul's statement doesn't definitively settle the debate, though some researchers argue it leans toward the Arabian location. The Jewish historian Josephus, writing in the 1st century CE, stated that Mount Sinai was the highest of all the mountains thereabout. This description is interesting because it could apply to different mountains depending on which region we're considering. Jabal al-Lawz is indeed the highest peak in northwest Arabia. However, if we're looking at the Sinai Peninsula, Mount Catherine would actually be taller than the traditional Jabal Musa. Philo of Alexandria, a Hellenistic Jewish philosopher from the 1st century, described Mount Sinai as the loftiest and most sacred mountain in that district, and noted it was very difficult of access and very hard to ascend. Various researchers have interpreted this differently, with some seeing it as supporting the Arabian location. Early Christian writers like Eusebius and Jerome also weighed in on the location. Different Jewish traditions have pointed to various sites over the centuries. Some ancient sources seem to connect Mount Sinai with the land of Midian, which most scholars place in northwest Arabia. These conflicting testimonies show just how complex and uncertain this question has always been. The split rock that defies explanation. One of the most photographed and discussed features near Jabal al-Lawz is a massive split rock. This enormous boulder, standing about 60 feet high, has a dramatic crack running right down its middle. What makes this rock particularly interesting to biblical researchers is the apparent water erosion around and beneath it. The edges of the split and the rock underneath show signs of extensive water flow, as if a large volume of water once poured from the crack. This has led some researchers to connect it with the biblical account in
Exodus 17, where Moses struck a rock and water gushed out to provide drink for the thirsty Israelites. The Bible calls this the rock at Horeb. Geologists who have examined the area note something unusual. The erosion patterns on this particular rock are different from other rocks in the surrounding area. Given that this region receives very little rainfall, the smooth, water-worn appearance is striking. Some argue this couldn't be explained by normal weather patterns and must have resulted from an extraordinary event. However, skeptics point out that natural geological processes can create unusual formations. Flash floods, though rare, do occur in desert environments and can cause dramatic erosion. Wind erosion over thousands of years can also create interesting rock formations. Without detailed geological analysis, it's difficult to determine whether this rock's features are truly anomalous or simply the result of natural processes working over long periods. The darkened peak of Jabal Maqla has become one of the most talked about features in the Mount Sinai debate. From a distance, the summit appears noticeably darker than the surrounding mountains. When you get close and break open the rocks, you find that only the outer surface is black, while the interior is normal light-colored granite. This observation has led to intense speculation. Could this blackening be evidence of the fire that supposedly descended on Mount Sinai? The Bible describes God descending on the mountain in fire, and the mountain being wrapped in smoke. Some researchers have suggested the black coating could be evidence of extreme heat. However, geological examination tells a more complicated story. Dr. John Morris, a geologist who examined rock samples from the site, reported that the blackened rocks are normal metamorphic rocks, typical of volcanic areas. The black coating appears to be a natural mineral deposit, not the result of fire or extreme heat. This type of surface coating, called desert varnish, forms over thousands of years as minerals are deposited by wind, water, and microorganisms. Desert varnish is actually quite common in arid environments. It forms when manganese and iron oxides accumulate on rock surfaces over long periods. The process is still not fully understood, but it's known to create dark coatings on rocks without any need for fire or extraordinary heat. Many desert rocks around the world display similar blackening, especially those that have been exposed to the elements for millennia. Archaeological structures and their dating. Near Jabal al-Lawz, researchers have documented various stone structures that some believe could be connected to the Exodus story. These include what appear to be ancient altars, standing stones, and stone arrangements. The big question is, when were these structures built, and who built them? Archaeological dating is crucial for evaluating these claims. The Exodus is Traditionally dated to sometime in the late Bronze Age, around the 13th or 15th century BCE, though scholars debate this extensively. For these structures to be connected to the biblical Exodus, they would need to date to approximately the right period. Here's where the evidence gets problematic for those claiming these are Exodus-related. Saudi archaeologists who have examined the pottery and other artifacts found at these sites report that the material is primarily Nabatean. The Nabateans were an Arab people who flourished from the 4th century BCE to the 1st century CE.
This is considerably later than the traditional dating of the Exodus. The structures that some have identified as the Altar of Moses or the site of golden calf worship show clear Nabatean architectural characteristics. While the dating doesn't rule out earlier use of the site, it does mean we can't simply assume these visible structures date back to the time of Moses. Ancient religious sites were often used and rebuilt by multiple cultures over time, making it challenging to sort out which features belong to which period. One of the most interesting pieces of evidence in the Mount Sinai debate comes from a simple biblical statement about travel time. Deuteronomy 1:2 tells us it took 11 days to travel from Horeb, another name for Mount Sinai, to Kadesh Barnea. This seemingly minor detail actually provides a crucial clue for locating the mountain. If we know roughly where Kadesh Barnea was located, and we know the approximate walking speed of a large group of people with livestock, we can calculate a rough distance. Scholars generally place Kadesh Barnea in the northern Sinai region. Working backward from there with an 11-day journey gives us a search radius. Here's where Jabal al-Lawz runs into problems. The straight-line distance from Jabal al-Lawz to the generally accepted location of Kadesh Barnea is approximately
150 miles. Even accounting for the twists and turns of an actual travel route, and considering that large groups with animals travel relatively slowly, this seems too far for an 11-day journey. Supporters of the Arabian theory have proposed various solutions to this problem. Some suggest the travel route was more direct than we might think. Others argue that the Israelites might have had ways to travel faster than our conservative estimates suggest. Some even question the precise location of Kadesh Barnea itself. However, this travel time issue remains one of the strongest arguments against placing Mount Sinai deep in Saudi Arabia. What radar scans actually reveal? Now let's address what modern technology, including radar scans, has actually revealed about these Mount Sinai candidates. It's important to separate fact from exaggeration here. There have been dramatic claims about what radar has supposedly found, but we need to look at what the actual scientific evidence shows. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have been conducted in various locations that are candidates for biblical sites. These surveys can reveal subsurface features like buried structures, cavities, changes in rock composition, and evidence of past human activity. The technology is particularly useful for detecting things without the need for excavation, which is especially valuable at sensitive religious or restricted sites. However, there's no publicly available scientific documentation of a comprehensive 100 times radar scan specifically of Jabal al-Lawz, revealing dramatic hidden structures or definitive proof of biblical events. While drone photography has captured impressive aerial views of the site, and some ground surveys have been conducted, claims of earth-shattering radar discoveries need to be approached with caution. What we do know is that modern remote sensing technology has helped researchers document the geography and surface features of these mountains in unprecedented detail. Satellite imagery and aerial photography have mapped the terrain. Some limited geophysical surveys have examined subsurface characteristics. But comprehensive peer-reviewed scientific studies using advanced radar at these sites remain limited, partly due to access restrictions in Saudi Arabia. Despite modern technology and decades of research, Mount Sinai's exact location remains uncertain. Traditional sites in the Sinai Peninsula face challenges, while alternatives like Jabal al-Lawz offer intriguing but problematic evidence. Ground-penetrating radar and other tools now allow researchers to explore these ancient mysteries in unprecedented detail. Whether atop St. Catherine's Monastery, Jabal al-Lawz, or elsewhere, the search connects us to millennia of history and the enduring story of Moses and the Ten Commandments. What do you think? Could the real Mount Sinai have been in Saudi Arabia all along, or do you believe the traditional site is correct? Share your thoughts in the comments below.